As Faraz is asking, first of all, what is it meant by freedom of religion? Okay, and I think that that's the problem with this being its own category because it often means more than expressing your religion. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So the example you gave shows why you get a lot of extra privilege by being categorized as a religion above other ideas, right? Because if it's other ideas, if it's not religious ideas, and you have the freedom of expression, the only freedom you get is to just express them, right? But
Hmm.
when it comes to religion, freedom of religion, what does that mean? Freedom of religion means that I get to practice, I get to do certain things beyond just saying that this is my belief. Like just the example that you gave, and all of a sudden, if anybody wants to come shut down your practice, now you have a lot of arguments to that. Oh, they are violating my right to practice a religion, right? This is a little bit more than just saying that these are the things that you believe, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's yeah. So that's why I think like freedom of religion is not just a mere expression of ideas. It becomes freedom of practice of certain things that have just been by some arbitrary reason decided. Somebody has managed to successfully argue why this is a religion, and then again, what exactly that means, by the way, Faraz, is a bit vague, right? And that's why because of that vagueness, people have a lot of opportunity to protect themselves by declaring themselves a religion, right? And because that practice is more than just expression, it's a lot of other things that when it comes some things that could end up being harmful. Then if it gets labeled as religious practice, then the back and forth whether this should be illegal because it's harming people and it's covered under other laws, or no, this is religious practice and and my freedom of religion gives me the right to practice this. Even if the side like this should be illegal wins at some point, the back and forth takes decades sometimes, right? And
Hmm.
just by giving them the weapon to make that argument that this is a freedom of religion, the whole process of going from the lower courts to the upper courts and to the Supreme Court and then losing and then having to redo it again just is such a waste of resources and time and decades of people rights being violated and having to live under religious oppression. Just removing this tool from them, and just say, hey, it's just freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, and nothing else. That will save a lot of people a lot of headache, I think. So I completely agree with this, right?
Hmm.
Um, but go on.
So Faraz is saying, I will do some steel manning. I want to pray to God and have a place of congregation. Why should the government stop me if I'm not harming anyone? The government can't stop you, but you
Yeah,
don't need religious freedom to do that. You have freedom of assembly. That's what
yeah.
freedom of assembly is. That's in the First Amendment in the US. It's pretty much in all the constitutions. You're allowed to assemble. You're allowed to associate with people you want to associate with. So if you want to pray to God, you can have a place of congregation. You want to do astrology, you can have a place of congregation. You want to
Mm.
talk about your love of knitting, as Armin said, you have a congregation. That doesn't mean you need a separate freedom for your love of knitting to express your love for knitting. So, yeah. Alex is saying religion attracts conflict because it competes with the government, especially secular government. Freedom of religion is a power sharing arrangement with the government. So, laïcité, he's talking about the French word for secularism and the French sort of
It's a
brand of
little bit more
secularism.
than United
Just the
States
word.
version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a specific brand. So
Yeah.
he's saying that it's a power sharing arrangement with the government, and that's a problem, right? That
Yeah.
is a problem. That it
Yeah,
shouldn't be a power.
because yeah, I mean, it's a good point to make that this was. This is a good reason why we need to get rid of it. Like, this is not something that was an ideal. It's not a good idea. Religion, putting the freedom of religion there is kind of like the government, the people that came up with enlightenment values. They needed to include this because of the influence that religion still had at that point. as the influence of religion gets lower and lower, I think it's a good time for us to revisit the way some of these rights were structured, and maybe be able to, like, just because something came out of the Enlightenment movement, that doesn't mean that we're going to completely endorse it, right? Like, we're not going to be like everything that came out of the Enlightenment movement is gospel, right? The fact that maybe even the Enlightenment movement was under the influence of the authority of religions, and the pressure on the religions. Even that might mean, again, this our support for Enlightenment values doesn't mean that we're not going to reevaluate them whenever we get the chance. And this is us reevaluating one of the rights that came out of the Enlightenment movement and considering getting rid of it. And Morta is saying, oh, here, do you want to?
Yeah, this is a great question. So Murtad Skeptic is saying, could promoting the Quran and Hadith or Bible be considered incitement of violence if not protected by religious freedom? And you know what? Yeah, well, the answer is, I think that this is one advantage of religious freedom for the religious, is that you're right. Like, the stuff that's written in the Quran and the Bible, if it was written in any other book, or if Armin wrote a book saying half the stuff, like, you have gay people should be stoned to death, or women should listen to their husbands. I mean, it could be a big problem. But Mein Kampf has a lot of things like that too. But it's actually legal. It's allowed. You can get it in a lot of countries. So you would have people being able to read it. But if somebody is out there promoting the book and going out in a congregation and opening up, this is what the H man said in 1942, and he's just preaching that to people, then yes, he might be he might be liable for incitement to violence, and he might be. It depends. So
I think that Mein Kampf and the Quran and the Bible should be all protected.
Yeah, I agree too. I
Under
agree.
freedom, for freedom of expression. I think the incitement of violence, that should be legal if it's specific call to action towards an individual or a group of people. Like, well, actually, group of people.
Oh, what they call fighting words in the U.S., like it's called fighting words. Like when you.
But doesn't the Bible, or doesn't the Quran and Bible have fighting words though?
It does. It does. They have specific things saying, go and kill people who do this, kill people who do that. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, the Mein Kampf is like, you right now in the United States, you could go buy the Mein Kampf on Amazon, and I think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So you should be able to buy the Quran and the Bible as well.
So I think the question that he's asking is that, if you're promoting it. So for instance, you have somebody, the way they open up the Quran and they say certain things are like, yeah, this is what we should do. The fornicator must be lashed 100 times or something like that. They'll bring up those verses. What if someone is out there in a congregation with 1,000 people on a Sunday, opening up Mein Kampf and saying, okay, this is how we should be treating the Jews. Okay, that would be considered incitement to violence. But the Quran and the Bible are protected from that. In this hypothetical specifically, they're protected from that by religious freedom, and they should not be. They should not be. They shouldn't be treated any differently than any other book.